The opening weekend of Rugby Championship has come and swiftly moved on, the first of the 3 weekends of the competition. It wasn't the results we thought. The games were a lot bigger blowouts than expected, but we still got some entertaining rugby. And of course, plenty to talk about from the 2 matches. The Wallabies, of course, were on the road, away at Loftus facing the Springboks. And in the second match, of course, the All Blacks hitting the road. They were in Mendoza to face the Argentinians. How did those games go? Well, don't go anywhere. Stay there. Get comfortable because it's going to be a nice, easy, short video, this one. Because, you know, around here, we don't talk for too long now, do we? Anyone? Didn't think so. So, of course, the weekend kicked off on the wee small hours, at least here in New Zealand, of Sunday morning, where the Springboks were hosting the Wallabies in a matchup that went, I think, as many people kind of thought it would have gone. The South Africans sent, as we talked about in the preview, a lot of players early to New Zealand, and that offended the Wallabies. They got very, very upset about that, and then proceeded to completely suck and get smashed by what they called a B team from the Springboks. So how does B team do it? Well, they used 2 men who we pinpointed in the preview could be crucial if they got the ball. Of course, their big 8-man monstrous pack went a long way towards giving those boys out wide some good front foot ball. But I tell you what, when Arendse and Moody get going together at such a young age, these 2 kids are just fantastic. But it wasn't all plain sailing for the Springboks, of course. The first try of the match actually went to the Wallabies, Korombete scoring in just the 8th minute to give them a nice early lead. Unfortunately, though, for the Wallabies, that wasn't converted, and that was about all they got to celebrate for most of the matchup, at least inside the 0 to 80 minutes. That was all they had to really get excited about. The Springboks took over, and there was one man who scored a bulk load of the points. No, well, Marnie Lubbock did pretty well, but not the kickers this time. Curly Arendse was sublime. If you haven't tuned into this matchup, just watch highlights. That's good enough to see what this kid is capable of. 3 tries to his name. Probably could have got more, to be fair. The 16th minute, the 30th minute, and the 51st minute scored them all consecutively as well. No one else getting on the scoreboard while he was in that rampant form. But it was just opportunistic tries and opportunities that he just took so well with the space that was provided to him. He was open and he used his pace and he used his agile ability to make his way easy to the try line to score those tries. And the creativeness as well, that set piece try that he scored, doubling around the back or the front essentially of the set piece to get that extra man overlap. And with his pace, he was near on unstoppable from those positions. Of course, I give a bit of credit there to Canan Moody on the other wing. I thought he went without reward, but did create quite a number of opportunities throughout that 80 minutes for the Springboks. We talk about how good their pack is and how they can monster and demolish, which they did, and was what we expect them to do. But now that they've actually got some outside backs that are actually getting ball, this team, it's got some selection headaches, especially in those positions as they make their way to New Zealand for round number 2. Of course, that wasn't when the try scoring ended, and another try should have possibly gone to Arendse, but it was for a little grippy hand, I guess we could call it, with a deliberate knock-on, giving a penalty try for the second of the 2, and of course the first, where the forwards actually did take over the rolling maul, picking them up as a penalty try, and a yellow card as well. The Wallabies picking up 2 of those, and well, it wasn't the night to remember for Vunivalu, who picked up that second yellow after trying to go for the intercept down on that left-hand attacking edge for the Springboks. Not much to really celebrate here for the Wallabies. They did look completely out of shape. They didn't look like they had much of a game plan, especially defensively against the Springboks pack, let alone the back line. Players were popping up through, rushing up on defence, but rushing up individually, which always causes problems for the rest of your defensive line when you're doing silly things like that, especially if you don't nail your man. They were nailing their man, not at all. Otherwise, for this, it was all the Springboks racing home with it. Peter Steph Toy capped things off with a 75th minute try before they thought they may as well let the Wallabies have something special. And it was something special too, from Carter Gordon scoring in the 81st minute. A great little try. Makes you wonder how much the Springboks were really invested in that moment of the matchup right at the end. But he did go a good distance to grab that try for the Wallabies. Their second, and it was also converted to give them their paltry 12 points. But we shouldn't get too excited about low scores on that side of things, because game 2 wasn't too much better. The Springboks, though, have certainly put out a big warning sign to global rugby teams this year, because it's going to be a big one, and this is a team that can certainly make things happen. So watch out when the Springboks get going, because these guys are going to be good, and I think we're going to see much more from them in the next couple of weeks. Can they bring that form, and can they bring that ability overseas, though? That's the problem we've always talked about with South Africa. They can do it sometimes, but others they can't. So let's see what sort of South African Springboks side we're going to see in 2023. Game plan looks good. The performances look fantastic. Let's see if they can keep that consistency and get the full load of Springboks racing on this season. For the Wallabies, though, do we look at some positives? They scored 2 tries. They had moments, I guess. They scored the first try. They scored nice and early. But there's question marks about certain players in certain positions. Mr. Cooper, for one. You've seen him often floundering around the field, not really knowing where he's going. But defensively, they were found out, and they're going to have to tidy that up, because most teams are very good when it comes to attacking abilities this day and age. So the Wallabies have got a lot of work to do, but of course, they head back home, where they will be taking on the Pumas, and that's going to be a match much more fit to what they can do. But by no stretch are these Pumas a pushover either. That is the final score, though, 43 points to 12. The Springboks doing it easy, very easy considerably, over the Wallabies. A little fluff to start with Colin Betty going early, but it was all Orange from there. And of course, the penalty tries just about got a hat-trick as well. A good start, though, for the Springboks, and they'll be very pleased with that opening match at Loftus, and they'll give them a lot of confidence heading in to round number 2. So we move on to game number 2, which is a bit weird seeing only 2 games of rugby over a weekend. It's almost like we need more, but don't tell World Rugby that, because we'll have tournaments every second day if they had it their way. Money is what it's all about, but this game was more about what the All Blacks could accomplish in their opening game of the Rugby Championship. They moved over to Mendoza, where they took on the Argentinian Pumas. An intriguing matchup that had quite a bit of concern, we could say, about how this All Blacks team was going to perform. There's question marks not only about the squad, but on the starting lineup and how they will go against the ever-passionate and always fighting Pumas side. Of course, things didn't start off quite how many All Blacks fans would have expected. I think the Pumas came out of the blocks very well in this matchup. They were smashing up in defence. They were causing a lot of pressure to the attacking and clearing lines of the All Blacks. And much like the Wallabies, the first 4 minutes or so was about all that they really got to celebrate. It fairly quickly came unstuck for the Pumas. Their defence fell apart in patches. They didn't seem to really capitalise on territorial advantages they had. And just what I've noted from that matchup, the first couple of tries that the All Blacks scored, which were in the 5th and 9th minute, they also scored another one in the 12th. But going back to that first try, now the first try was from the All Black 22, and after they had lost that sort of pressurised rushing defence that did put a lot of pressure on the All Blacks early on, the All Blacks got their ability to push out and force their way back down the other end of the field. So that was a good try. The All Blacks established that nicely, and that did take the crowd out of it, I thought, quite a lot. Dane Coles scored that try. It was pretty much the length of the fielder, and it was like, okay, the All Blacks got a little bit about them off the blocks after they got through that little niggly early period. The second try, though, was a bit fortuitous, and this is what really killed the crowd, and I think it kind of destroyed the Pumas' spirit, which is a bit sad after just 2 tries that they kind of fell a little bit more off the ball. It was just a kick. It was an error from the back 3 or 4 or how many were back there for Argentina. But it was all a bit disjointed. The ball fell free. It wasn't taken on the full. It bounced clear and was picked up by, I'm pretty sure, Narawa running down that wing, who got a clear and escaping run just about all the way to the try line. Once they had that front foot ball, though, the All Blacks piled on through, smashed it up, and then they grabbed the second try through Savia. From there on, it was another opportunistic try for the All Blacks. The third one going to Barrett. Actually, the Pumas had no fullback. Emiliano Buffelli was down injured while the play continued, and I think that really messed up the whole structural integrity of the Pumas backline. Without Buffelli there to cover to an experienced player that organises very, very well, they lost it completely. They had spacings all wrong, they had gaps out wide, and of course, someone trying to cover fullback who was just like, go cover fullback. Roger, done it. And he didn't do it. He didn't do a very good job. So that was a pretty easy runaway numbers game. Counted pretty fantastically there for Barrett's try. Then the icing on the cake after this, the All Blacks had taken over. The Pumas had pretty much shut up shop. Rieko Ioane smashed his way through. Good try though. Let's be honest, Rieko Ioane was the one that started that Dane Cole's try as well. I thought he had a decent enough match-up, and I think the criticisms of him have, or should, probably be lowering down a little bit now, because he has proved, I think, over the last 12 or maybe 18 months, his work ethic, I guess you would call it, or his abilities through that midfield have certainly improved. A lot on the attacking front, not just trying to smash your way through, but actually slicing and using his pace to do the job for him. Maybe it's the combination that he's building up with Jordie Barrett in that midfield that is actually proving to be quite a good combo for that All Black side. He got the fourth try, however. That was the 29th minute of the matchup. And then just before half-time, Aaron Smith. Oh, it's good to see the little nuggety halfback, Aaron Smith, scoot his way over for what should never be a try. Ruck, fringe defence is something the Pumas should never struggle with. The power and the size of their players when they just have to plant themselves right near that breakdown, and just did not. Aaron Smith weighs as much as a bath towel when you've just come through the shower. It's wringing wet. It probably doesn't weigh much more than 20 kilos. He's a little man, and yes, that's very exaggerated, but the Pumas should have never struggled to drive him back from his sniping little run, and you've got to always be prepared for those number 9s to do that sort of thing. For Smith, though, credit to him. It was a great little try, and it was just about his awareness and abilities to spot those gaps, and his passing game also, while we're on the topic of Aaron Smith, was very, very good as well. 57 minutes saw Barrett grab the, 6th try for the All Blacks. It really was becoming a little bit, it was becoming poor. The Pumas had grabbed a try of their own. Sordoni managed to bowl his way over for their first points of the night. That try was unconverted, and with the game wearing down and it was looking pretty bad, the All Blacks in the 30s, of course, and the Argentinians managing just to get the 5 points before the end of the matchup. Narawa grabbed a try on debut as well in the 76th minute, and then Augustine Clevey come off the bench and showed everyone who's boss by grabbing a try on 81. Full-time score there, though, was 41 points to 12, and much like the Wallabies and the Springboks, this was a game that was never really a contest. Half-time for the Springboks game was 17-5. Yeah, there was a little bit maybe the Wallabies of belief, but at 31 points to 0, the All Blacks over the Pumas. This one was done at the break, if not well before, the way that the Pumas fell off the game as those early stages wore on. It was a real shame because it was a rapturous crowd. They were making a lot of noise. Their team went 20-odd so points behind, and they all went to get hot dogs or something because it just went silent. There was the odd claps and the yays, but not that typical Argentinian crowd that we used to, which is a real shame because I thought that could be a massive deciding factor for this Argentinian team if they get that support behind them. You know, if they did what the Wallabies did and scored first, it could have been their opportunity and their chance to really build on what they did create. But it was unfortunate. The Pumas game plan fell apart. They were kicking everything away, and they were just seemed absent in the matchup. Not that full 100% commitment that we normally see from the Argentinian side, almost second-guessing their options, choosing just to kick it away rather than taking the defence on, which is a real shame to see because that really is their ability and their strength to take on defenders and just use their skills and abilities very, very well. We did see some standouts for the Pumas. There wasn't too many that I thought were outstanding, but certainly in their pack, Bruni was outstanding, the number 8, and you can't go past the impact that a guy like Mateta has. Their front row was very good, of course. A try for Sildoni goes down as something to cap for him, but I thought outside of the set piece, yes, don't talk about this. Their scrum got demolished. Their line out was pretty average. But around the paddock, those guys had decent little matches of running the ball around. But set piece, certainly, and a real shame because that is a strong part of Argentinian rugby, is that set piece and especially their scrum. They normally pride themselves quite highly on how that performs. But the All Blacks, well, maybe credit to them. Their scrum, their set piece was very, very good. Damian McKenzie was a questionable aspect of this game before I watched it in my preview. I said, is he going to stand up? Is he going to really be a noticeable addition in that number 10 jumper? He started off pretty shaky, got an early kick charge down, managed to recover it. He was in and out of the game. He created a couple of tries. Was he outstanding? Was he amazing? Did he stand out from the crowd of a very good performing All Blacks team? I can't say yes, he was simply spectacular. He was solid, a lot to work on, but his team was going forward. That pack, geez, not very often you say that, was dominating the Pumas pack. And that is something that you don't always get. Will they get that against the Springboks? Let's be honest. They're not going to get that dominance against the Springboks, I don't believe. Will McKenzie have another opportunity? Will he have a chance to see what he can do? Not behind a very dominant All Black pack. And that is really what concerns me. And that is something I didn't think he would get against the Pumas. But here we are. It was a very, very poor display by that Argentinian team. Other than that, I still like the look of Jordie Barrett in the side centre, regardless of what everyone else has been saying about him. I just think his ability to just crash that ball up and get his team moving forward and just bowl people out of the way is very good. His combinations are building nicely as well with Rieko Ioane. Out on the wings, though, did we see much from the wingers? Narawa was pretty good on his debut, but aside from that, the option taking and the opportunities, Caleb Clark was average. He was bang average, if not poor. So there's a lot of work for those guys and options. Maybe make changes in those positions. But all in all, pack very good for the All Blacks, much like it was for the Springboks, and a dominant display with 2 games, both with big, big scores. Look at that, 43 points to 12 and 41 points to 12. That is a weekend we certainly did not expect the All Blacks getting up on that one, 41-12, of course, over the Pumas. And that does wrap us up for the opening round of the Rugby Championship. A little bit of a review if you couldn't catch into the matches. I think it's decent enough to have a look at certainly highlights if you're a Springboks or All Blacks fan. If you're a fan of the Wallabies or the Pumas, maybe just wait to see what happens next weekend. But there we go. It was big wins for the Springboks, big wins for the All Blacks, and of course we'll have plenty more content coming your way in this week as we look forward to round 2. Of course, we're going to have a preview of that weekend. After knowing what we know, we'll see what the lineups come out as this weekend as well. But there you go. A little bit of a recap. Let me know what your thoughts are. Who stood out for you? Who were you impressed by? And equally, who were you not impressed by? Who do you think needs taken back to club rugby because they're just not up to the standard? Let me know in the comment section as always. And I'll see you again very soon for another video. Until then, thanks for watching as always. And I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care. But, cheers.